Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Natural Fertility with Dr. Jane. I'm Dr. Jane. Today, I'm joined by one of my practitioners, Katie, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. That's a mouthful,
It is a
FDNP.
mouthful.
We are competing for the highest download podcast today, and we're going to bring you a hot topic. What are we going to talk about?
Yeah, we are going to talk about what IVF can't fix.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're going to tie it into male fertility, female fertility as well.
Mhm.
But we've had a couple of, I talked about a client that I was just thinking about. You have had a couple of clients recently where you're confused of why IVF is not working because you're sold that it's this magic pill.
Yeah.
And that's the way that you're going to get pregnant without actually doing proper diagnostics and proper, treatment preparation of any kind. And we're seeing it that it's actually creating a lot of a mess. So I'll let you kind of dive in, and then I'll add my case studies as well.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk all day on this topic, I think. Recently I've seen a lot of couples come to us after going through some portion of the IVF process, and they're just very disillusioned by the outcome, which is essentially nothing, right? Like the outcome has been nothing.
Or they're in an even worse situation.
Absolutely. And that's what they find themselves in. And they're never told that up front, that your health is not going to get better during this process. It's actually going to get worse. And even if you have high chances, it's still a very, very low percentage that are successful on the first try. But that's not what they're told, right? They look at statistics and then they get to the end of this process and they're like, oh my gosh, it didn't work. And then there's a lot of blame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame that happens within usually the woman because she feels like she was a failure. And the men are showing up saying, I did everything that I thought they told me to do, I paid.
Which is nothing.
Well, I paid for this process, right? Like they think they're the provider. They play that provider role and they're like, I'm supporting my wife or my partner by helping her achieve her dream, and making it financially possible, making the environment they live in possible. And both partners get there and then they feel really, really let down. And then they're questioning, is it the IVF process or is it me? And that's when they find themselves giving us a call and trying to work through what really could be going on.
Yeah, the heartbreak, I think, is that women are blaming themselves.
Absolutely.
Because they're just going, I am so broken that even the drugs didn't work.
Yeah.
And I want to really change. I can't tell you how many women I sat in front of who felt a pressure to do the IVF because they were like, I need to provide these children to my family. And it's not even that the husband is putting the pressure on or the grandparents, but you just feel this internal pressure of like, this is what I'm meant to do and I can't do this thing. Like my body is supposed to be able to do it. So it's a very, very big burden to carry, if you will. And then the idea that we have been painted is that IVF is just going to bypass those things and you're just going to be able to get pregnant. And that's not the case. It's not that simple. And I have a patient that I'm thinking about right now that we're working together where you get to a point where I'm asking her, like, do you think it's possible for you to get pregnant naturally? Even like because she's improving tremendously. And she's like, no. And so then I'm like, answer this question. And I don't like, you're going to need to think about it for me. Is it that you don't feel, because once you're pregnant, do you feel that your body is capable of carrying the pregnancy, giving birth, feeding that baby? And if the answer is yes, then what component is it that you feel your body is stuck in? Is it that the ovulation, the maturation of the follicles isn't happening? Is it there's something around ovulation where you feel like your body is not doing something? Is it the fertilization component? Is it the traveling down of the tube? Is it the implantation? Like, where do you feel? And I just want her to answer from like, don't think it. What's the first thing that comes? So then I can work with her to see if I can optimize that process. Because it's like, well, how can you trust your system that I will be able to carry this pregnancy and grow this baby and no issues, and I'll be able to birth this baby and I'll be able to breastfeed this baby, but no, I can't get pregnant. I'm like, where are we breaking down here?
Yeah. And I think we actually do intuitively know things, even though our brain doesn't know them. And so it's a great question to ask because it's a limiting belief that will limit progress. I don't think we don't talk enough about that part of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what IVF can't fix.
Yeah. Well, I mean, IVF was originally, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like originally created specifically for tubal issues, right? Like
Yes.
that it couldn't get through to the uterus. And now we use it for everything. It is literally like, oh, you haven't been successful naturally in 6 months? IVF it is. Like there is no evaluation. I can't get over how many people we see that don't have even basic blood work. I know we've talked about this on podcasts before, but like, how do we miss something that basic? And we catch things all the time, insulin resistance, major, or not major, but like things that are
Blood
significantly
sugar,
off.
cardiovascular disease. Like we were on a call yesterday and I was like, this guy, I'm
Yes,
wondering if he's going to make it to 40, let
right.
alone have a baby. Like these are really bad numbers. Like your liver enzymes are through the roof. Your cholesterol is through the roof. And then they look at their sperm and I was like, yeah, your sperm is fine.
Mm.
So, well,
And
it
it's
can't
not.
be.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's fine within these parameters that the World Health Organization has set. But
Yeah.
when I look at the level of inflammation in this male's body, I'm concerned about a heart attack. I'm not concerned about, sperm quality anymore, which obviously is still impacted.
Yeah.
But like, you're not even going to be around for your kids if we don't fix this.
Absolutely. But IVF is I want to say it's more of a mechanical type of process where they just rule out the mechanically based issues. And if they're all clear, then we move on. And they don't look beneath the surface. They don't look under the hood at all of those pieces that create really good egg quality and sperm quality. Those are all ignored. And no matter how great of an IVF doctor you have, they can never fix the quality of the egg and the sperm. And so many couples come to us with recurrent miscarriage or implantation failure or chemical pregnancies through the IVF process where they got so far and then it failed for some reason. And we go back to what is the quality? It's not about quantity. It isn't about can we put these two pieces together better? It is literally a quality issue, not quantity. And when I work with couples, particularly when I go through that process with the male partner, it's like an aha moment when they're like, so wait a minute. I have a lot of quantity, but you're telling me that, you know, it's my DNA that's actually impacting this. And then you can show that to them in their lab results. And they're like, oh my gosh, no one ever told me that.
Yeah. I think the biggest, when we're not successful through IVF, I have a lot of questions. And one of the questions is, why didn't it work? And let's understand all of those pieces as opposed to you're just going to try again. We're going to do a different dose of drugs. We're going to do whatever. And when it's an embryo quality issue, it is just as much as egg quality as it is sperm quality. So I can't tell you how many of my patients who are 40 plus, they got blamed that it was egg quality and no one looked at the male at all. And it's like, well, was it egg quality issue or was it embryo quality issue? And I was like, it was an embryo quality. Right. So what's going on with the sperm? And then we look at the sperm and the reference ranges are set by the World Health Organization for IVF. Not for natural conception. And then I see posts all the time on social media where you're like, you can bypass male fertility issues with doing ICSI and you can bypass most of them. It's like, no, you can't. That's crazy. You're telling me because you are a scientist in a lab, you can look at the sperm and pick the best looking sperm. You have bypassed male fertility issues. You have no idea what is in that sperm. The methylation, the DNA damage, the oxidative stress, you have not bypassed anything. You've picked out the best sperm, but guess what? The egg can do that too. It just doesn't want to be fertilized by bad sperm. Like literally the egg signals to the sperm. And if that sperm is rubbish, it does not want to get fertilized by it. And you have all this ego in the IVF community to be like, no, I can bypass this. It's like, what are you talking about? Look at the man standing in front of you and you tell me what genetics you're bypassing.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, I'm
I
like,
love that you bring that up about the egg send signals. I was sharing that with somebody recently, and I mean, it is mind blowing how smart God created our bodies to be.
yes, it's
Talk about
insane.
natural selection. Like, it is at its finest natural selection. So that egg can tell if it wants to be fertilized by the sperm. So in some ways, and I've actually listened to a lot of kind of theories on this, but in some ways it's like, ethically, are we doing the right thing when we are trying to force this together and force the egg to accept something that it doesn't want to? So I just don't think people are aware of the intricate detail of each step of the process. And then, take a step back further and say, what could I do to improve upon each step of those processes to make this happen? So, we certainly work with couples that will eventually need some type of assistance,
Yeah.
but it comes back to, we help them with the foundation.
Yep.
Because whether they do it naturally or they do it with assistance, we want the quality to be good, because it impacts the pregnancy. It impacts the health of that child for the rest of their life and then their children. So, we're talking much bigger stakes than, can we just get these two little pieces to come together? It's so much bigger than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's for sure couples that IVF is not an option because of the ethical
Hmm.
concern, and there's no right or wrong. I think my job, like in our job as practitioners, is just to support you in your journey and help you bring, that baby forward. And there is a lot of different pathways, and some people are going to be comfortable with those pathways and others are not. I kind of always take the stance of like, if you want to have a baby, I'll have you have a baby, but I don't know what that's going to look like. So we're going to start here, and then
Hmm.
I'm going to see what you're able to do, because at the end of the day, I want you to have quality of life.
Yeah,
If I have
absolutely.
someone coming in and they are already working extremely hard on their health and they're not getting better and we're testing some infections panel and they're just filled with crap, I'm like, what's going on here? And now this is a woman that I'm thinking about. It's like she went through 4.5 rounds of IVF. So she just called the last round because she just felt so terrible in her body. She had such terrible methylation, terrible liver function,
Mhm.
terrible gut function. And when you put an insane amount of drugs into a system that's already struggling,
Yeah.
that's setting you up for some really high risks of developing cancer, like literally any kind of cancer,
Yeah.
cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, like autoimmune disease, any disease, because it's just a really big strain on the body. So if we want to do IVF, if that is that next step for us, and maybe that's because there's tubal defects, or maybe it's because we are going to use a sperm donor or an egg donor, or there's something else that's, and those are going to be like the biggest reasons why we should be doing it. If it's an autoimmune condition, IVF is not going to fix your immune system.
No.
It's going to make it angry, or they're just going to suppress your immune system with steroids, which
Have it effect.
yeah, I mean, the detrimental effects of that is a whole other story.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it all comes down to kind of evaluating, is this egg, is this sperm? It's usually both in some way. But I just think about, I had a client a few weeks ago who came to us, and she had already gone through 2 rounds of IVF. The husband was so supportive. Like, literally, he would do anything. They were both working on their metabolic health without any guidance. They just were like, we just feel like we need to do this. And the only thing he had done was a sperm analysis. And she'd already gone through 1 round or 2 rounds, both failed. And because she was 40, they said, you probably need an egg donor. Never looked any further. But all I had to do was take a look at the sperm analysis, which was 2% morphology, not even eligible for IVF. I mean, theoretically, they want it at 3 to 4%, and he was at 2%. And his hormones were a wreck. His metabolic health was in pretty decent shape, but his hormones were a wreck. Like, there's no way this is going to work for you guys. And it all fell back on her. And I'll never forget, like, I thought the gentleman was going to cry because he thought he had been doing everything to support her. And he was doing amazing things, but he just didn't know what was missing. And if
Mhm.
you don't know what's missing, you can never fix it, right?
Mhm. Well, nobody told him that he was an issue.
Yeah.
So he was just doing things next to her, not optimizing. And I actually kind of made this mistake. I had some feedback from my mentor recently because one of my female patients were working through a ureaplasma protocol. And I kind of have just been treating him for the ureaplasma instead of testing him and seeing what else. And so they have a history of very many partners, like 80 plus partners before they met one another. And there was history of STDs and STIs. And even though they're quote unquote cleared now, there's a lot of kind of microbial issues and unwinding of your past life, if you will, to the effect that it has now on your histamine levels, your estrogen levels, on testosterone levels for the male, and then obviously the ability to ovulate and the autoimmune conditions that are existent with that. So we've done some really good work on her, and you could see how like her antibodies are going down and everything. And for him, I was just kind of following the protocols that she needs to do because I'm like, if we're unwinding her, I just want to make sure he's not reinfecting her with the same thing. But he might have something that she's not showing up, but it's still triggering her immune system. And so down the rabbit hole I go, looking into, seminal microbiome testing, looking into even a proper, like, it's called a UTI screen, but essentially it's just screening for infections and doing like a urine culture, because if the infection is sitting in the bladder versus in the semen versus in the stool, like we got to find it. And to help, if we kind of just leave the partner on the side, they support the woman, but they're not working through their own stuff, and that essentially holds them back. So that was a really big aha moment for me just this last week. And so as you were talking about that couple, I'm like, there's so many men who just have no idea, and they're kind of told to keep a strong face because I'm not as bad as my wife. I'm handling it emotionally better. I don't feel like a wreck, or they won't even say the things that they struggle with because they see their wife struggle so much more.
Yeah.
And I actually want to bring that to the surface because it's, yes, you're going to be better at handling this emotional stress because you're, I don't want to say you're better equipped for it, but you're not as impacted by it for the most part as women are, arguably, but it's still, it's doing.
Yeah. Well, they have a lot more emotion under there than they think, than they want to let out, right? Like what you're saying. And another couple I'm thinking of recently I worked with, like he was so angry. He was silent almost the entire first call we had together. And there were just two almost outbursts of just anger. And it came back to he felt like he was working really, really hard for her to have the outcome she wanted, meaning he was working two jobs to pay for, let's face it, this is not this is not a
Cheap.
inexpensive journey. And so I do think the men, I alluded to this earlier, they show up feeling like I'm going to make this happen to her, for her, probably financially, work really hard, and I don't have to address anything because that's my role. And that led him, they ended up going all the way through the IVF process. He had a lot of faith in the system because he had experience in his family with IVF decades prior. And so he just had a lot of faith. And then when it didn't happen, he was like, everybody's just out to get our money. And it just brought forth so much emotion. And I don't think he was prepared for that. It comes out as anger. And then also realizing we had to have a really frank conversation about his sperm quality. Again, never told that that was an issue. And it's heartbreaking to me that couples have to experience that to be able to get to their aha moment, to be able to move on.
Yeah.
So
I just think, when you were like, he had a lot of faith in the conventional system, I just have this like heartbreak because I remember what it was like when I realized that the conventional system wasn't going to help me.
yeah,
Like I remember the
heartbreaking.
moment, it's heartbreaking, where you're like, I trusted this doctor. I put so much time, energy, money, whatever into this process. And I'm worse. I'm not better. This person doesn't care. They quit. They left. They told me that I need to have, blood in my stool every time before I can get any testing done. And it was like, wow, so I think it's hard when we trust something. I don't want to say blindly, but I look at my parents and even my grandma, like there's no way she would ever question the authority. Like she
Yeah.
just wouldn't. It's the doctors know. I'm going to follow what the doctors say. And they would just keep putting her on more medications that would keep making her sicker and not, and it didn't lead to anywhere. So it's deep. Like it's deep. And I think we're in a place where we have to start questioning it. If you feel like you're being ripped off, it's probably because you are. If something feels fishy as you're going through the process, it's because it is. Like, I don't move forward with anything if it feels fishy. I just don't. Like, and even with my clients where they try to, quote unquote, pressure me to be like, am I ready? Am I ready? Am I ready to start trying? I'll just look at the data and I'm really honest. Like, listen, guys, something is still out of whack for me here. And I can see it on your data. And I can see that your ANA is still elevated. I can see that there's iron that's still low. So there is an infectious component. And I know you're 45 years old, but if we just go forward with IVF in this state, I'm concerned about the health of that pregnancy and the health of that baby.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody's in a hurry, right?
Of course.
If you're 40 or over, for sure, you want to fast track. And I think, that's what IVF promises is you can be pregnant in 3 months versus if you do this on your own, we don't know how long it'll take or if it'll happen. And so that is one of the shiny parts of IVF that cause us to rush into something rather than saying, can we take a 6-month break, lay a really solid foundation, and then try, whether that's naturally or with assistance. So really focusing on the foundation. And going back to what you said earlier with the labs we were looking at yesterday with the gentleman who's like, we are worried about a heart attack. Like it is obvious he's headed in that direction at 30. What was he, 30 or 31?
31. Yeah.
And then you think like, okay, so even if you can have a baby, but then you end up with disease or death after 2 years later, like, is that what you want? Like, so the foundation just matters so much in every way, shape, or form that we can talk about the fertility conversation.
Yeah. And I think if you root yourself in data, it's going to be really difficult for you to be misguided.
Well, and that's, the gentleman that I've been talking to recently where I say, look, here are the labs that you submitted to us. Let me go through them and share this information with you. That's what gets them. That's what opens their eyes and says, holy cow, we have been missing something really important. But then that leads to a lot of emotions that they have to deal with of coming to that realization that
you've been lied to,
that you've been lied to,
that you're not perfect.
but also that just there was more they could be doing, even though they didn't know. Like, I think that's important to understand. Like, we're not like pushing blame on this is the male's fault and he should have known better, because they don't tell you throughout this process. Your doctor doesn't tell you, your GYN, your fertility specialist, they don't have the time, energy, or resources to dig deeper. Unfortunately, it's just the way the system is. But these gentlemen show up and for the first time are hearing this really difficult news, and then they have to process that. Like, I could have been the one holding this process up. That's really hard. But the data significantly helps. But the data also helps to track it too, right? Like, we can look at it from the negative, oh my gosh, it tells me all these bad things. Or we can also look at it from, now we have this baseline and we can make changes and then recheck it. You've seen guys just light up when they see that their hard work actually paid off and that they're going in the right direction. So, using data.
You feel significantly different when your data changes, right? Like, you don't realize it because it's a slippery slope. But when you have made the changes, you feel significantly different when your liver enzymes are not elevated, when your cholesterol is intact, when your blood sugar is regulated. You feel different. And I root into data more and more because it just, sometimes you're like, this is the best I have ever felt. And then it's like, yeah, but there's still all these things that are elevated. And you just have never actually felt really good,
Yep.
and that's okay, but I'm
How
gonna
much
show you
better are
how.
you going to feel?
Yeah, there is another layer for it, and this is where we get into, like, breaking some limiting beliefs where you're just like, "I didn't realize how crappy I felt," and
Mhm.
it's this shedding, if you will, of this old person and personas and, even character traits that you've had and these beliefs that you've had about yourself as you go through this process because you go, "Oh my god, there's this whole other thing that
Mhm.
I didn't realize existed," and I think about it as something that when I first started this in the fertility space 6 years ago, it was I want to help people build generational health. Like, I want you to have healthy children. And I've seen plenty of people who did not struggle with fertility in any way, shape, or form suffer through pregnancy,
Mhm.
suffer through postpartum, and then suffer with their children.
Yeah.
And that's the pain that's the worst because when I had a 3-year-old in clinic who had severe ADHD and rage where he would be running after his mother with a knife,
Mm.
you're like, "Can we hold back? Can you tell me about what happened in pregnancy? Can you tell me what happened during labor? Can you tell me what happened in preconception?" And there were so many red flags, like so
Mhm.
many red flags in terms of the depletion that she had, the irregularity of her cycle, the way that that baby came into this world. Like, that's when I was like, yeah, no, there is so much that we can do to prevent and
Yeah.
to support. And we can do that by looking at data.
Mhm.
Because if I look at a pregnancy and I see high inflammation or I see blood sugar dysregulation, I'm worried about the health of that child and their metabolic health.
Yeah.
Like it's it's painful as a mother because to see it and to go through it and it's not to blame, but to bring context and awareness that absolutely preconception care is the most important thing that you can do for the health of your child, let
Mhm.
alone like just to improve your own quality of life.
Absolutely. Yeah, I that also goes back to just like you mentioned earlier about we trust our doctor kind of blindly. Like we've been
Yes.
trained to do that. We also just link disease to it happens. Like, oh, we got bad genes and it just happened. I've seen so many kids with eczema at like 4 months old, 6 months old. Like they haven't even been around long enough to be exposed to something to cause them to be allergic to something and have this entire immune response. So it came from somewhere,
Yeah.
right? So asthma, allergies, eczema,
ADHD.
PCOS, right? Some of these processes don't show up till later when your daughters start having a period, and then you're like, why do they have PCOS? Why do they have all these other inflammatory conditions? So um, we have to start looking at the things that we do, the way that we live affects our actual cells, right? We're talking about cellular health and that foundation. And we have
Yeah.
to start asking better questions and looking at data and then making changes based on that.
Yeah. I think it's really hard for people to zoom out because we're just kind of living in the immediate world. And you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about these. And then, honestly, like I've always been that kind of person in the homeopathic world. I'm a bird, which
Yeah.
means I can zoom out and I can see things. And as a teenager, or even as a young adult in my early 20s, it was like I didn't really fit in because I'm like, why would you do that? I could see the consequence of that and I don't want to do that. So it
Yeah.
felt very against me, but then I felt very lonely.
Yeah.
And I battled with that a lot to try to fit in, but then but I don't want to keep doing that because it doesn't make sense. And the consequence of our action is so much deeper than, oh, I went out drinking and so the next day I'm not feeling well and that's it.
Yeah.
You know? There's so much in when couples are sitting in front of us, like, for the initial consultation, they're always so surprised of, like, "You went so far back, like, I just thought you were gonna talk to me about fertility," and correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a male patient recently who was like, "Why are we talking about this?
Yeah.
I just wanna know about fertility," and it's like, we're talking about it because your sperm is a direct reflection of everything that you've done in your health. And
Mm-hmm.
so if your liver enzymes are elevated, if your blood sugar is elevated, if your inflammation is through the roof, that's going to reflect in your sperm because
Mm-hmm.
your sperm is what the body makes with the tools that it has. So if the tools that it has is not very good because they're so inflamed, or the
Yeah.
nutrients that you have, then that's going to be a reflection of the sperm. We have to stop looking at fertility as this fragmentation of your health, like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just the reproductive
Continuation.
system. What are you talking about? It's just the reproductive system. How do you think the reproductive system works? If I pull it out of the body, do you think it's going to work on its own? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, that's
We
crazy. Like, the fragmentation has to stop.
Yeah, we have to go back super far. And I think about for my own kids, mine are bigger now, but I'm already thinking about my son is almost 20 and he's got a almost fiance. And
Oh,
yeah, but we talk about, I'm like, he was doing something the other day and I'm like, I'm worried about your fertility. And he's like, Mom, I'm not even thinking about kids. And I'm like, I am. And I also know your history because I'm your mother. And I know how many antibiotics you had as a child because he had terrible ear infections before I knew anything about functional root cause wellness. I just think about with my own kids, so many, I wish I just could go back and make that change, but I can't. So what can we do differently now? And what ways can we optimize now to make their future better? But when we're working with clients, we have to go really far back because infections could be from 20 years ago.
you
Antibiotics,
just learned to live with it.
right. And it has become your normal. The way that you feel has become your normal and you don't know anything different. So if we don't go back to figure out what that root cause was and to find which factors are contributing to your health today, then we cannot fix them. So we have to dig deep. We have to, we meet initially for kind of a get to know you session to make sure we're a good fit with clients. But then the session after that is where we dig deep in that initial consultation. And sometimes our clients don't understand why we have the process that we have, but it's because we have to go deeper and we also don't want to overwhelm. Like we can't, if we're meeting you for the first time, we're going to talk about some of this information, but that's not the time and space to go deep. We need to kind of split that up and we have 2 separate sessions to do that. So
Yep.
it is important for our recommendations to our clients to be able to give them very specific recommendations based on their health history, not based on this research says this would be good for you. We want to look at them individually and then be able to make specific recommendations.
Yeah, and it might be that it's, don't get me wrong, we're deep into research and we love the papers, but at the end of the day, as clinicians, we have to treat the person sitting in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And just because the research came out for this, what's the profile? Like I remember one of the papers was like, if you used NAC, the women that were used NAC, so N-acetylcysteine, at 300 milligrams for 7 days, noticed an improvement in X, Y, and Z. And I was like, imagine if they actually used the proper dosages.
Right.
They knew, like they did some
therapeutic.
testing. Right? Like they
Yeah.
looked at the nutrient panels for these women and saw, well, like the women that didn't see an improvement, is it because 300 milligram dose was too low? Is it because NAC was actually not the right molecule for them to increase the glutathione? Is it because they don't actually need it and that is not the molecule that they need? It's more glycine or the actual glutathione component. Like there's so many issues there where
variables.
there's so many variables. And so you can look and say, yes, NAC is really great. But then in practice, if you have someone who every time they take NAC, they get a stomach ache, are you going to just give them NAC? Hopefully,
Right.
as a clinician, you're not. And so you're going to try to find ways to help them build that molecule more naturally, or you're going to, like you're going to incorporate different proteins, or you're going to add glycine and glutathione, and you're going to be able to see that through doing the testing and then experiment, like the actual experience with a patient, and then eventually you get more of an intuitive sense. When I see someone, I go, yeah, she's not going to be able to handle NAC. Let me give her this. And I can do that by looking at the labs and then having the past clinical experience where the quick fix mentality of like, but I want, like, why don't you ask me all the history now? Why don't you just get all the information now?
Yeah.
That's the opposite of the space that we create to develop a deep emotional connection with you, because we need to do that so you trust us, because we're going to go on a big transformation.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know if you know this, but this is going to change your life. And it's not the transactional relationship that you have with your IVF doctor where I paid the money and I didn't get a baby, or I did get a baby, great.
Mhm.
That's my ROI. It's like, no, no, no. This is a transformational journey. I can't even see you having a baby until all those liver enzymes are regulated, your blood sugar, because it's a mess. And
Mhm.
I know what that pregnancy is going to look like. And I know what that postpartum is going to look like in the health of that child. And I ethically don't feel right going, yeah, go ahead. Just have the baby and see what happens. Because I know what happens, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
And it's hard to have that conversation, but I'm like at a point in my life where it's like, listen, if it doesn't resonate for you, that's cool.
Mhm.
Here's what I'm doing. If you want to come and you want to actually like change your life and the trajectory of it and build yourself the family that you're dreaming of, all of that stuff, I'll help you do that. If you just want to have a baby because that's all you want to do, I'm probably like, we're not the right team to help you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good distinction. It's important. In a lot of, when we look at the medical based world, when we look at IVF in particular, it is a lot of based on research and articles. And while those subjects are real people in their studies, like you mentioned, we don't know the variables associated with their success or their failure. And that's where actual experience matters rather than in theory. And I
Yes.
see a lot of couples basing so many decisions off of theory rather than experience. Even down to, they're taking a ton of supplements that they heard, again, based on theory, they needed, but they don't know if they need that dose or that supplement at all, like you just said. So, that's what we're here for, is to help
Mhm.
work through all of that and help evaluate what you need in particular, not just in theory. And I actually had
And
a
there's so
doctor.
many different forms of things, right? Like I was
Yeah.
thinking about people are like, well, can I take this berberine? It's cheaper. No, because it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
here's how I know. I've tried it and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. So I've tried it. I got sick. I looked at my data. I looked at my analysis, my stool analysis before and after, and it did nothing.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
no, I'm going to save you a lot of time, energy, and money. And I'm going to tell you to get this thing that's exactly the one that works. And sometimes it changes. And then it's like, oh, this used to work. And now they changed something in the formulation and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
We're doing that. Like, you should see my cupboards of supplements.
I have a little pharmacy in my dining
Yes.
room, like a
Yeah.
cabinet.
Yeah.
And even you try something and you're like, well, that's out, and I'm not going to recommend that brand or that type. My dad, I had a conversation with him last night, and he's like, I don't think supplements work. And I said, Dad, you're taking one from Walmart that's been sitting on the shelf for 6 years and is made of all synthetic, disgusting
Yeah.
crap. Of course it's not going to work.
It's
You know?
actually making things worse, right?
Right.
Like, yeah.
And you have expensive pee, and it's yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had a doctor that used to say, because before I made this transition in my mindset over to more functional health, I had one doctor that actually stopped me and said, listen, it doesn't matter if I think this medicine will work for you, because it worked for somebody else. He said, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like when it works for you, then we know it was good. And so we need to get to personalized medicine so that we can get results.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. I want to do you want to finish with that? Because that's good. Personalized medicine to get results.
Yep. We need
And
personalized.
if you want personalized medicine, you want to go on a transformation, you can fill out an application to work with us, and that's linked down below. And then our fertility strategist will be in touch and see if we can help. And if we can't help, we always try to point you in the right direction, because I genuinely I'm just such a proponent for the body. I think the body is so incredible. And I hate hearing women and men just give up on themselves and go, that's the way that I am. And
Yeah.
that what actually tells me is that the infections, the pathogens, the toxins are overburdening you, because I say human cells are happy cells. And if you didn't have a bunch of this toxic load that you're not even aware of, you would never have thoughts like that.
Yeah.
And the problem is that some of the people that we admire on the internet are actually filled with those things as well.
Yeah.
And you like, they just have a nicer package and you think, well, I should be like this. And it's like, no, this guy's brain is full of lead. Like, I can tell, you know, or like he's full of parasites, he's whatever. So I think individualizing and understanding that it's your own unique journey and to just try not to compare as much as you can will actually do you a lot of good. And then, like I said, human cells are happy cells. You would never have negative thoughts about yourself if you didn't have this load. And I've seen it, you know, so many times now where I detox lead and he literally becomes a different person or she becomes a different person. And you're like, there you go. That's who you were meant to be. That was lead. Let's get that shit out of your body. It's not meant to be there.
Yeah. We certainly don't want it there for pregnancy.
We certainly don't want it there for pregnancy.
Yeah.
Well, then you see it in the babies. When I see lead in a 5-year-old, I'm like, what the fuck?
Where did that come from? That we've removed it from our environment. Like, they're not eating the windowsills anymore.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Well, thank you, Katie.
Thanks for having me.
What a wonderful conversation we had today. And we'll be back next month. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.